Hey team, welcome back to another incredible episode of the Intentional Agribusiness Leader podcast. This is your host, Mark Jewell, and today I am joined by Mr. Paul Mikesell. He is the founder and CEO of an amazing company that you're going to want to learn more about as we dive into this show. So stay tuned. I'm not even going to give you the name. I'm not going to give you the product. We're going deep on AI today. We're going deep on we're going deep on technology that is in the future of the industry. You guys are going to love it. So Paul, welcome to the show, man. Thanks for being on.
You bet. Thanks for having me.
This is going to be cool. You get the same opening question that everybody gets. What does it mean for you to be intentional?
I think that the kind of North Star for me and my company is treat your employees well and treat your customers well. And so we have a whole rubric of our 5 principles about how we like to run things when we're doing decision making, things that we think about. And most of those principles are around either treating our employees well or treating our customers well. And I think that's served us really well in this industry. If you treat your customers well and make sure that they always feel like they're getting the best treatment and make sure that they understand how much you really do put them first and you care about them, that actually pays back tenfold as opposed to just trying to get money. And so I've kind of used that in my life just generally. And I think in business, it's served us quite well. And people talk about part of the reason they love our company, Carbon Robotics, is because of the great service and support that we give and the way that we treat our customers.
I love it. I love it. And you gave it away, man. Carbon robotics. I'm really excited to get into this topic because it almost just seems so futuristic that I can't get my mind around it, that most of us cannot. But tell us a little bit about it. What is it?
Yeah, okay. So we build a couple of different products, but the main one is called the LaserWeeder. And maybe people have heard of the LaserWeeder or seen videos. It tends to go viral every now and again on the sites, YouTube and X and Instagram or whatever. And we've had a couple of different moments where people really started taking notice of the LaserWeeder. Elon tweeted or responded to some tweet about us. We've been featured on Rogan a couple of times. RFK Jr., Secretary Kennedy's been talking about us a bit because he's been learning about it. So we tend to pop up on people's feeds here and there. So, okay, so the LaserWeeder is a system where it uses AI. And that's my background is AI systems. I've been developing this stuff for quite some time. What it does is it finds weeds in farmer fields, and it finds it by the AI looking down the cameras and figuring out what it's looking at. And then there's a laser system in there that the AI can control. So there's a couple of different AI systems running, one to find the weeds and one to do the targeting. And it puts a really high power laser on the weed, burns the weed, kills the weed, dead, no chemicals. The nutrients from the weed goes back into the soil, becomes fertilizer for the crops that you're trying to grow. It's incredibly accurate, millimeter level accuracy. So we get right up against the crop. We keep everything nice and clean. That's the LaserWeeder. LaserWeeder is doing great. People love it all over the world at this point.
Yeah, that's incredible. You told me off the mic, like 15 countries that you guys are in already.
Yeah, so LaserWeeder, hundreds of LaserWeeders around the world. We're in 15 countries. That's right. We do direct sales and direct support in every one of those locations. So every time somebody needs help or a question or we need to fix something, they're dealing with a Carbon Robotics employee. That's important to us. It's expensive to do things that way, like I was kind of talking about, but it also pays back because everybody gets the best service and support.
Right. So you guys are building everything mostly integrated. So all of your customer service, you're not selling this through dealerships yet. Everything is being sold and serviced straight through Carbon Robotics.
Yeah, that's right. We do our own sales, obviously our own engineering design. We do our own support, but we also do our own manufacturing as well. So we build these machines ourselves. And we've kind of learned this over time. We used to do an outsourced manufacturing, and that worked for a while for us. But what we learned there is that you just get a better job done if the people building your machine are employees because they feel like they're part of a team, they're part of a mission. You get equity in the company. They participate in all the success of the company as opposed to a contract manufacturer where the contract. What I've learned is the contract manufacturer is really trying to get your machines built as cheaply as possible so that they can get any margin out of that delta. But that's not what you want when you're trying to get a machine built. So that we've had a bit of an evolution there. You mentioned, we don't sell through dealerships you said the word yet, and I like that because that sort of shows that I think what people think or people expect, I guess, that when you at some point you would, but our philosophy is we don't, and we probably
Yeah.
never will.
Good. Yeah.
Because I don't want to lose that connection to the customer,
Hmm.
and particularly in agriculture, for machines, right? I understand
Right. Right.
you folks do different stuff, but for machines particularly, there's not really a great distribution layer there. You're either a John Deere
Hmm.
dealership, you're a Case dealership, and those folks specialize in knowing the John Deere tractor, knowing how to service and support it. They have access to the parts inventory, all this stuff. To come in with a new machine and say, "Hey, why don't you sell my thing too?" It just doesn't work that well, particularly in agriculture, especially because, as you mentioned, it is kind of it's a new system. There's a lot of education, and even more than just
100%.
and even more than just education, like our customers want to ask us questions. They like the interaction, so I want to make sure that we keep it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you have the advantage of it being such a new frontier
Sure.
because of I mean, just the level of work that you're doing, the level of precision, the technology that goes into it. Really, really incredible. Really, really interesting to me. We've developed our own AI learning product at the Momentum company that we're deploying. And so I'm super, super interested in what all goes into it. Talk to me. So, I mean, as you're describing that, I almost picture kind of like the Tesla model where they don't
There you go.
work through other dealers,
Yep.
right? They have their own dealerships. You go to those places to do all of your shopping and financing, et cetera,
Right.
goes right through there. So
Yeah,
same
that's right.
concept.
That's exactly it. We do see that model as a pattern match for us, right? Because we do own that relationship end to end, and we want everybody to feel like they're dealing with the company, not with the dealership. And frankly, I mean, we've all had the bad experience trying to buy a car through a dealership, right? I just don't want that scenario.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
there's no haggling, right? LaserWeeder is one price. We don't give discounts. We never give discounts. And what that means is that every customer knows they're getting the same price. They don't have to worry about did they haggle, better than their neighbor, which is the experience we want people to have. And so yeah, I think that pattern holds. It is analogous to how Tesla does things versus what was going on before.
Yeah. Well, it's a disruptive idea in the world of agriculture because we're not used to that. We are not accustomed. That is, I mean, as a sales trainer, I have helped a lot. I mean, several thousand salespeople in ag to
Yeah,
date have to
yeah,
deal
sure.
with that because every co-op that they're selling against has a different price. Every retailer has, everybody's got their own book and their own price sheet. And quite frankly, that customer, at least the good old fashioned Midwestern farmer, is constantly price shopping, looking to see who's got a little bit better price here or there, a little bit better basis here or there, et cetera, et cetera. I don't want to get lost on that though. I think that's interesting. You're doing something disruptive technology wise. You've got a disruptive model. I like that. I think I was reading that you came in like number 22 on the top 50 most disruptive technologies list this year.
Yeah, that's right. On the CNBC Top 50, which is a TV show and a publication that covers mostly financial things. Yeah, I mean, we're number 22 on the CNBC disruptor list, but I like to think that we're number one in the farmer's.
There you go. Well, I was looking at. I didn't see any other ag companies that outranked you in this world and on that list. So that's very, very cool. All right, I want to talk a little bit about building a business culture at your stage because it is a disruptive company. As we would look at it from the ag side of things, right? We're very used to our traditional ag companies and brands that we deal with, and everything sort of eventually ends up rolling up through Bayer, Corteva, the FMC, or one of the larger companies that we think about, BASF, and so forth. And so, at least that from the chemical side, and then or John Deere, right, or Agco or whatever you have on the implement on the mechanical side of things. And so how do you build a culture that withstands being so disruptive? I'm actually kind of curious about this because you're going to take some heat.
Yeah, I mean, it's okay. So some of the things you talked about, when you're talking about like inputs and things like that, going through Corteva, that all makes
Mm-hmm.
sense because what you're talking about there is broad distribution on a regular input, right? You've got to buy this stuff over and over again. You need it constantly, right? Different cadences, different frequencies for the product, but you need it sort of everywhere you are. It's a little different with a machine like the laser weeder because when you buy a laser weeder, that laser weeder is going to live with you for a decade, and you don't
Mm-hmm.
have to keep rebuying it, but it is a big investment. So the difference there, I think, is really the farmer is going to want to know a lot more about our machine and make sure they're doing the right decision because that's going to live with them for a long time. And it needs to pay off. And we want to make sure that it pays itself off through the benefits the farmer gets. And so even more so then, that means we want to have that direct connection with the farmer because they need to know we're going to be around, right? Wait, if your seed distributor goes away or a new one crops up and you want to change something, you can do that. But for our world, they need to know LaserWeeder is going to be backed and supported by Carbon Robotics for as long as they're going to run it. And we give software updates, they need maintenance, all of this kind of stuff. So it's kind of a different way, I think. It's a different type of sale, and it's a different kind of relationship that our customers, the farmers, need to have with us. And the other thing you do when you buy a product like LaserWeeder, you're not just buying that machine, you're buying the service and support, as I talked about. But the other thing you're really counting on the company to provide is long-term supply chain, right? So if something breaks on that machine, you need to know we're going to be there and you can get the parts. And so this is a whole system that you need to set up. And so we did that. We've been investing in that. I can get parts globally anywhere we need to go. We can airdrop stuff. Something needs to get fixed. So we don't like to see any downtime. But it's a lot different, right, than something on the input side where you're talking about global distribution.
Of course. Yeah, a little bit different, big time. But we do appreciate having the distribution in place. We have a part that has been back order with our Acura MDX now for 3 years.
Right.
And I had to go on YouTube and find the jerry rig solution to finally rip my dashboard apart and find that one little obscure part and replace it or fix it. Right. So
what was
important.
The part? What was the part?
It's a circuit board.
Yeah.
It was a circuit board. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a failure in supply chain, really. You know what I mean? What that means is somewhere in that chain of who's responsible, who's the support center, who provides the PCB, the circuit board. There's a breakdown where somebody doesn't feel responsibility, right? That's 3 years is only got to mean somebody doesn't think it's important, right? For my business, I don't want to have any of that anywhere in the top to bottom. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's where we've had some folks on the show lately talking about logistics and in just the level of intentionality, since that's the theme of the show, right? Yeah. I mean, it really takes a lot of intentionality to make sure that you got the stuff that people need when they need it, how they want it, et cetera, et cetera. And it's a big job. It's a big job for people to pull off. Yeah, and you got to want to do that.
When we talk about getting our machines out there, we talk about selling them, and it's a big, exciting moment when we sell another machine. But we also think a lot about the service and support side, meaning logistics, people, tooling, trucks, right? Who's going to interface with the customer, all of that stuff. And you have to plan that ahead of time. When you talk about being intentional, you say, well, I'm going to sell this machine. It's not just what's my bank account number. It's like, do I have support there? Right? Do I have a well-trained staff there? Did they get a good handoff from the sales team to know how to support this customer and know what the expectations were? Right? That stuff you got to think about that before you decide you're going to go sell this thing. And that's we've all seen these ag tech companies go bankrupt and fail. And I think a lot of it part of it's been business model, which we can talk about. But part of it's been just bad understanding of that. They sell some machines, then they go, best of luck to you, I hope it works out, and the thing doesn't work, right? And so, I don't want to dance on the grave of things that are screwed up, but I guess I'm not dancing at all, but Monarch, I think, did a really bad job of this, right? They made an autonomous tractor that they didn't know how to support and service and didn't listen to customer feedback. So they partied around the success of their sales, and they didn't take seriously the responsibility of their long-term commitment. And I think that we need to do things the other way around.
Yeah. So we learn from those examples. Let's just say that. Let's leave it at that. I do want to bring into the listener's mind a little bit of your background and success. We didn't talk a lot about it on the front end, Paul, but Paul has been in this space for a little while now. So talk a little bit about your background, because you've had multiple significant exits from businesses, technology businesses. In the billions also. So yeah. I want to, as you're talking, it all sounds good, but it's like, okay, what does this guy know? Based on your bio, a thing or two.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I'll give you a little bit of background. I mean, this whole journey for me has been interesting. I was a city kid, right? I grew up in the city, and the thing that got me excited at an early age was computers, computer programming. I started programming computers when I was 10 years old, and that was the thing that I really, really enjoyed. And so the thing about it at the time that I grew up was that if you were learning to write computer software at that age, at that time, it wasn't because you thought you were gonna make a lot of money at it, right? This was before, there's all this explosion in media about people making money in tech companies. And so really what you were doing, if you were programming when I learned how to, you were just really doing it for the love of it. You really enjoyed it. And so that was kind of how I got started. Yeah, I've been in a bunch of different tech companies. I've started a couple of companies. One of my companies was called Isilon Systems. We grew that company and then had a multi-billion-dollar IPO, and then a bigger company bought us off the open market and an uplift off of that. So that was a couple of $1 billion. I didn't make a couple billion, but the company was sold for a couple of $1 billion. I had
Right.
equity in that. It did well. I was early on at Uber, which is you can call a car on your app and they'll come pick you
Mm-hmm.
up. I started what's called the deep learning group at that company, which is the team focused on the specific kinds of AI that nowadays they would call a neural net, the LLM that you maybe interact with on ChatGPT. Maybe that's part of your recommendation product you were talking about.
Mm-hmm.
All of that stuff is a neural net. It's all based on neural nets. The way you train a neural net is called deep learning. So that's how all this comes together. What I got really excited about just after talking to a bunch of farmers was the problems that were people have trying to grow crops, trying to grow food, right? Feeding the world, as we were talking about a little bit before. And what can we do to bring technology to that tool set? Because people hadn't been doing it, right? There was this giant chasm between what's going on in Silicon Valley and what's going on in the farmland. It's
Mm-hmm.
a geographic, just there's usually a series of mountains in between, right? It's like come look at San Francisco versus Central Valley out here in Washington State, Seattle versus Tri-Cities versus Othello,
Yeah.
what have you. There's a distance to drive. There's usually a political changeover from the big cities to the farmland. These people largely don't know each other.
Mm-hmm.
And so what that means is that the technology being developed and invested in from Silicon Valley doesn't make its way to the farms. And that's a real shame. So I wanted to change that. And
Mm-hmm.
that was an important, I think, thing for us to do is really think about how do we drag these VCs, the venture capitalists, into the world of thinking about investing for agriculture. And I think we've done a pretty good job of that. But really,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of it was about just like the love of the idea about bringing this kind of technology to the farmers and giving them more tools.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's talk about the tools with a little bit more depth because we talked about laser weeder, at least topically, and I know you've got some other stuff that bolts onto the tractor.
Yeah, right.
So let's talk about those. And I just want to dive deeper about and learn more about like specific applications, what kind of farms you're partnering with, and things like that.
Yeah, okay. Laser Weeder is cool. So Laser Weeder is basically a series of computers that are all looking through these cameras and then finding the weeds and putting lasers on the weeds and burning them out. We put the laser right on the meristem of the weed. And so this system, the AI that's sitting in there is world aware. And what I mean by that is it has an understanding of where it is in the machine and where the machine is on the field and where the weeds are. And it also knows, based on the travel that the machine is experiencing, where their weeds are gonna be. So it knows how to put the laser right there and kill that thing. That same AI is also what we run in our other system called the Carbon ATK. It's the Carbon Autonomous Tractor Kit. This fits onto your tractor, turns it into an autonomous tractoring system. So what that does now is we really focus on the big field work. We do a lot of tillage, we do a lot of tilling, a lot of ripping, just a lot of field prep work. We'll
Mm-hmm.
do obviously laser weeding. We also do cultivators. We'll do sometimes people want us to do planting. We do all kinds of stuff in field. These are typically jobs for a John Deere somewhere between a 6 series and eight series. Usually that's what we're plugging in. A lot of sixes and a lot of eights. Uh, and so that AI in the tractor also understands the world in which it's operating. And it can do things like, obviously turn around, line up on the furrows, all that stuff, but we can drive down the furrow lines without GPS. It does it entirely visually. which is maybe another analogy to Tesla, in some ways, right? They do all,
Mm-hmm.
maybe kind of famously, they do all their self-driving entirely through cameras. We do the same thing when we're driving the ATK system through the field. We're watching the furrows and driving down those furrows. So even if you don't have the GPS lines marked out or they're off or whatever, which happens, we'll stay on those lines. So that AI system is working based on, what it knows about the world. The other interesting thing about the carbon autonomy system, which is what drives the ATK, is that on all those machines, we also have the ability to do what's called operator intervention. So we have a group of people whose job it is to watch those autonomous tractors. And whenever we see an anomaly, some kind of intervention, we can take over remotely and drive that tractor around whatever's happening. And so that means two things. It means that as a farmer, when you're running the carbon ATK system, you don't have to worry that it's going to stop in the middle of the night because we're watching it. So if something happens, which does, right? A coyote run through the field, the fence falls over, something floods, whatever. We know what's happening and we'll take control of it. So it won't stop, and we'll get it around whatever's happening. It also means that we're tracking what happens so that if you wake up and it's been running all night, or you weren't at the field while we were running, you want to know what things happened. We have the whole thing tracked and logged. And then I guess the third thing is it also means that when the operator has to take over for some reason for an intervention, we have the training data to know what the right thing was. And so the autonomy gets better and better over time. So that system has been working really well. The ATK system, the demand for that has vastly outstripped our ability to even produce the kits at this point. So we're moving as quickly as we can on the ATK system. It's the same problem that everybody's feeling that we were targeting with the LaserWeeder, which is there's not enough labor. It's hard to find enough people to do all this work. You want to run 24/7 if you can, but how do you find the operators?
Yeah, it's a big talent, people.
Yeah.
Workforce, right? Labor workforce is a big challenge. It's been coming up for a long time. I had Tim Bucher from Agtonomy on, and a similar thing that they're doing with most like fruit and nut trees in California right now.
He
a
does
lot of their work.
He does a fair bit of orchards and stuff too. Yeah. So that's a great way to think about it, right? We do these big open fields, and they do a lot of the smaller.
Yep. Makes sense. Okay. So that's cool. So we've got this ATK system that probably has application just about anywhere for any crop, especially for planting, harvest. As you're describing it, I'm picturing the movie Interstellar where McConaughey has his autonomous combines that seem to be running at the wrong time of the year because the corn is still green anyway.
Yeah, right, exactly. This is the other problem, right? The Hollywood people also don't know anything about farming. So
yeah, every time I watch it, I was like, why are they combining green corn? So, but that's the idea, right? I mean, you have an autonomous machine that could be running 24/7. Okay, so as it pertains to like the weed zapping, first of all, I just want to appreciate the fact for a second that we're talking about lasers, period.
Yeah.
But then lasers that kill weeds.
Right.
So how does that get done? And I mean, I think we talked a little bit off the mic about the size that they go that is good up to now, and then like what's the longer term projection for like mid season in a corn crop or soybeans or something like that.
So yeah, lasers. I didn't know anything about lasers when I started this. So and I didn't know much about the way plants grow either. So I started learning a lot about lasers and laser technology, and I spent a bunch of time at the local universities here with the plant sciences department and the horticulture departments, learning about the ways in which plants grow. And that's how I learned about the meristem and the way that these plants grow. The undifferentiated meristematic growth cells is kind of where all of that plant matter comes from. It's kind of like how people have stem cells. Well, plants have something very similar. If you burn that out, the plant will die. It's much different than people always said, like, well, how are you going to kill it if you don't go down to the root, rather? The point here is we're doing so much damage to the structure of that plant that it dies, and there's nothing growing at that point, and so the whole thing just fails. And that was us, learning a lot about lasers and the ways in which lasers work and the way light interacts with this plant matter. So we had to learn a bunch of stuff, and then getting the targeting all working was a bunch of interesting optics in there that we have to do to make sure that the laser is actually on target. we've innovated in a lot of different ways about the way control systems can put a laser where they need it to go and then observe that happening and make any real-time corrections to the path, because stuff's always bouncing around in the field. And so what you need to do is be able to do not only real-time prediction and targeting, but real-time live path correction in order to stay on that weed.
Mm-hmm.
We like to be, I'll say less than 2 inches, less than a couple inches in weed size. The real equation here is vegetable matter to energy to kill it. And so when the weeds are smaller, it takes less energy to kill that weed. And so we basically want to get in as early as possible, because we can rip through that field if it's early. The later you wait, the later we come in, the slower it's going to be, because it just takes more laser energy to kill those weeds. So that's kind of how it works. If you get us in early, you get us in very early in that first flush, we can just rip through the field. We have been doing, like I mentioned, a lot of vegetable crops. We do over 100 different crops right now. Common ones is onions, carrots, lettuces, and then we do everything all down the line. We do like radicchio to radishes to anything you can think of. And in the Midwest, we're starting to do some more organic corn. And so what's happening there is we're providing really nice yield bumps. We saw this first in the vegetable side, where if instead of spray, you put a laser weeder on it, your crops will come up bigger, healthier, and faster. And we've seen 30%. This is documented by the University of Wisconsin did a report with some of our growers, and then they wrote up everything that happened in that trial. Pretty consistently, a 30% yield bump. We've had people get 50% yield bumps versus herbicide spray. And that's a lot of the ways in which people are seeing the value out of the machine, is they just get a lot more out of every acre. It's not only about yield increase, but you're also putting less water and less fertilizer on the same land, because the crops are coming up quicker. You're not beating them up with the herbicide, right? So same thing in the corn. And in the corns, we'll get right up against those corns. So you get these beautiful, clean corn rows. And so you don't have to run, a tine weeder through there. If you've seen these things run, they rip out a bunch of the corns and rip out a bunch of the stalks. And so that's been really, really big for some of the organic corn.
Wow, that's fantastic. Up to what stage in a corn field are you able to actually go through and do the weeding?
Yeah, we are about somewhere between 2.5 to 3 feet off the bed top, depending on how deep the furrows are in between. So that's really the limit, is just when the crops start hitting the top of the machine. And so it's a pretty easy way to think about it. In onions, something like that, we'll be in there right up until harvest. In corns, you got to get us out once it starts getting to the point where they're certainly taller than 3 feet.
Okay, gotcha. And is that something that could evolve over time? I'm trying to get a view of the future as you evolve, as you have more research, more development, more R&D, et cetera. Is that something that, do we have a flying drone just flying over and zapping weeds at some point, or what's
it definitely could evolve. People want us to do more on the corn side. They also want us to do more in orchards, which we just don't have the machine shape and size. So it's kind of the same problem, right? That the thing is bigger than what you're trying to laser weed. We have to change the way the machines are built, obviously, to do that. Different form factor. Yeah. There's a little bit of like safety and regulation we have to worry about, because now we're shooting outside of the underside of the machine. There's an escape out the bottom of the machine, basically. We got to think about that. Drones would be really hard, because if you've had the experience with the drones, you know that you're always worried about battery lifetime and what's your actual flight time. As soon as you put a payload on there, something you're carrying, the flight time goes way down. And then if you're going to try and power a laser, the flight time is going to be incredibly low. So I think it'll be a long while until a drone starts to make sense.
Yeah. I say it a bit tongue in cheek, right? But we're talking about laser weeding with, autonomously with something that can basically drive itself through a field, right? So we're already, you're in it every day, right? Most folks are out here, just trying to get a crop in the ground, and they don't really care how, right? Yeah. Or can we afford to buy the fertilizer and the chem and all the things that go with it this year, because it's a challenging year. That's where a lot of people are. So this is kind of one of those, it feels a little bit sci-fi yet, not, you guys like you and I are probably in this studying a lot of this stuff all the time because we're working in it every day, but the vast majority of us are not. I talk to a lot of my customers about how they're implementing AI and technology into the business, and it's still very 2005,
Sure.
right?
Of course.
So,
Yeah. I mean, if you're trying to just get a crop going, when do you find the extra time to figure out whatever else is coming and happening in technology, right?
yeah, exactly. It's tough. Yeah.
That's why we try to be in the communities and make sure that people at least know who we are and they hear about us
Mm-hmm.
from us and they know how to get hold of us and ask questions. And some of these, sometimes some of the sales that we do, it's on the back of a 5-year relationship that they've been talking to us before they decide, okay, I'm going to commit.
Yep. Based on that, it sounds like even though we're selling something very cool and very futuristic feeling, the relationship still prevails.
Yeah, that's kind of really what matters in the end, if you think about it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I have a hard time believing that agriculture specifically will ever not be a
Right.
relationship focused business. I think we can do a lot to supplement our relationships with technology. That's what we work on, and to help sellers do a better job of that, basically creating a second brain for them to help keep track of everything. Because Lord knows they don't fill out their CRM. To us, CRM is a 4-letter word. And so we just give them an easier way to do that while teaching, we just hook this up through a regular LLM and then a database that we built. They take a picture of the plant and it says, hey, this is what's going on with the plant, or this is what it is, or helps them identify, or what is that particular type of weed. And it gives them a way to then communicate back to their grower that they might be working with, hey, here's what's going on, and here's what's going on in your field. Here's what I think you should do about it. But historically, it takes a long time to get especially a newer seller up to speed.
Sure.
And this, we believe we can take it from 3 years down to 1 year in terms of effectiveness
Nice.
with that technology. Man, okay. I want one last thing before we fully bring it in for a landing. Paul, we talked a little bit. I gave you a heads up about this off the mic. As you're looking at it from, really a complete outsider. When we think about most of the folks in the ag industry, there's a smell test. Does it smell like it came from here? Does it sound like it came from here? Right? And you're bringing something totally different, similar to, I would say, kind of like Friedberg back with Climate Corp. Going back now 15 years ago when he sold it to Monsanto. A similar kind of like came from, here's a Silicon Valley tech product that made it into it. But by the way, I actually worked on the when it first deployed, when they deployed the climate app. I assisted with the dealer training for those that would be distributing that. So I've been in this for a long time. Talk to me a little bit about what you see as an outsider looking into the industry. What do everyday Americans want? What is that, North Star that people would love to hear about the ag industry going forward?
Well, okay, so this maybe dovetails into a lot of the stuff that Secretary Kennedy's been talking about lately, but there is I think, a desire on the part of the consumer and on the part of the farmers to know what these chemicals are and what they're doing to their long-term health and the long-term health of their customers in the food and supply chain. I think a lot of people have this sense through observing themselves and their friends and neighbors and what kind of negative health effects they're getting, that we're kind of screwed up our food supply. I think we know that, but not everybody understands all the ways, or maybe nobody understands all the ways in which that's happened. And I feel like getting herbicides out of the field has been a good thing for yield increase, for crop quality, for nutrient quality. I worry about, and I'm sure a lot of your listeners do too, is the long-term health effects of people getting exposed to these chemicals, having to spray them year over year, and you don't really know what the long-term effects are. And I feel really kind of bad and upset about some of these farmers I see who have a lifetime of exposure to this stuff and have these really bad late in life health effects. And so I understand how we got here, and you could see how it happened, and it was necessary to grow crops at the scale that we need to. But I want to see technology like ours be able to come in and help alleviate that issue and make it so you actually can grow these crops without having to spray this stuff all over the place. We did a bunch of studies early on just looking at what happens when you compare a sprayed vegetable. So look at a conventional onion versus one that's been laser weeded or otherwise grown organically, where you don't have that same chemical effects, and you cut them in half, you can tell the difference in the quality of the onion. And so that decimation that's happening to the plant while it's growing and trying to get the harvest has degraded the nutrient quality, is degraded, everything about that plant that the human body wants. And so if that was necessary to do it at scale, now that we have technology to not make that necessary, can we keep the scale and get rid of the chemical dependency? And I think we're at the point that we can. So I like that. I'm excited about that. I've certainly seen a lot of, I'll call it the Silicon Valley business model, try to come into agriculture and fail. And I'm sure you've seen a bunch of this too.
Yeah, lots of it.
Right. A couple of guys graduate from Stanford with their MBA or their computer science degree, and they decide they're going to go out and teach these farmers how to farm. That way of thinking and that model fails every time. And so I think that Silicon Valley has decided that agriculture is not a great place to invest. But I think we're sort of breaking that model because we're in the field. We developed this on the farm. We're in the field every day. All of our people are out, and we've developed a long-term relationship with most of our customers. And so I think we can show that there's a different way to do this. One good example of this is a lot of the Silicon Valley funded tech companies wanted to do this robots as a service model where they deploy a robot on your farm and then you pay all the time, year after year, kind of like you're just kind of like renting time on this machine, basically. And we know people don't like that model, right?
Yeah.
You mentioned your broken Acura before. Well, what would you think about if you had to pay an annual fee for the heated seats or whatever, or the air conditioner, right? You'd get fed up. So, but that's a very Silicon Valley way of thinking. We're going to do a as a service model. I think that's broken. Farmers don't like it. It's also bad for the companies trying to build the machines because they have to outlay all this capital to build a machine, and then they're trying to sort of get the money for the bill of materials for that machine back successively over years to pay for the thing. So it's bad for the companies. It's bad for the customers. I know there's controversy about this too, but people get upset when John Deere tries to charge them a yearly fee for upgrades. Like what's that for? I think the Silicon Valley way of thinking about the way in which we deploy products is broken. And I like to be a company. We just sell a machine, right? And then the farmer gets all the benefit of it, right? The farmer gets all of the extra benefit you get from optimization of the machine running should go to the customer, not to the company who's trying to resell it year over year. So I think we're seeing a bit of a shift here. I hope some of our success is kind of leading the way. And I'm looking forward to seeing a lot more interesting tech get out to the farmers, do some good, help them be more profitable, have more control over what's happening, not have such a labor crisis, and not have to worry about what's happening to these decades of exposure to these chemicals.
Yeah, beautiful. Great answer on that. And I think it's an interesting potential new North Star. It's been suggested potentially is it a herbicide-free industry at some point? Is that even
can
possible?
We get there? Can we reduce? Can we get rid of? I mean, the chemicals are getting banned. Also that's happening. There's herbicide resistance in the weed population. That's happening, right? So we got to take control of this.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know there's a lot of people working hard on this and trying to find solutions to that, whether it's better chemical application or see and spray technology and things like that. I mean, we're trying to do a better job. We're evolving. My question, I guess, and I'm going to leave it at a question, is that does the robotic technology and the AI technology evolve even faster than what we've been doing for the last 100 years? And like, how quickly could that happen? And everything that I'm reading says incredibly fast.
Yeah, I agree.
So, man, Paul, thank you for being on the show. It's been a real pleasure getting to know you. I could talk your ear off all day and ask all kinds of questions. I won't, but thank you for being on.
Thanks for having me. It's been a great conversation.